Now let's begin breakfast headlines by telling you that the Edo State government has approved the dissolution of the executive boards, agencies, and parastatals in the state's public service with immediate effect. This was contained in a statement by the Chief Press Secretary to the Governor, Fred Itoa. Itoa said that the Governor had ordered all affected appointees to hand over all government properties in their possession to the most senior public officer in their respective ministries, departments, and agencies. In the meantime, reactions are trailing Governor Monday Okpebholo's inaugural address following his swearing-in as the new governor of Edo State on Tuesday, the 12th of November at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium, Benin City. New Central correspondent Austin Azu, who spoke to a cross-section of respondents in Benin City, the Edo State capital, reports that the respondents urged the governor to focus on how he intends to revive the infrastructural deficits across the state instead of blame games that he has started with on his first day in office.
Well, it looks as if they have been nursing some anger, and it was an opportunity to vent it. The issue of unsworn judiciary members who should have been high court judges, the issue of members of the House of Assembly who were not sworn in. Maybe that's not the real place, let's face it, to throw up such things. It just shows you're coming from a kind of background.
To me, I don't see any new thing coming out from what the governor just said yesterday. He said he wants to probe the activities surrounding the lawmakers that were not inaugurated. This thing has happened how many years ago? The governor doesn't need this. It's a waste of time. To me, it's a waste of time. If you start on a clean slate, let the state move forward. I don't see anything good coming out from that probe, if he's going to do it.
But my advice to Mr. Governor in this respect is that as soon as he's seated in office, he should try to consolidate on the achievements of the past administrations, because governorship is about what you call it, development and the welfare of the masses. That's what we're looking at.
Well, still in the news, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has blamed the crisis in the People's Democratic Party to a failure in leadership by elders of the party. Wike, during a media chat with newsmen in Abuja, singled out the chairman of the People's Democratic Party's Governors Forum and Governor of Bauchi State, Mohammed Bala, for contributing to the crisis in the party.
Leadership is not by mouth, it's not talking. It's not by talking, it's by action. It's not to know you go and blame INEC. How do you know how people are treacherous? When that war finished, as the chairman of PDP Governors Forum, we have only done it north and south. But Bala connived and went to Bauchi and took away the chairman of Governors Forum of PDP to the north. Of course, he knows if I was governor, it will happen.
And now to the education sector, the Minister of Education, Dr. Morufu Alausa, has urged labor unions, particularly those in the education sector, to prioritize the welfare and education of Nigerian students over strike actions. Alausa made the call during the opening of the 359th Quadrennial National Delegates Conference of SANU, held in Abuja on Wednesday. The minister noted that industrial action should not be the first resort when seeking government's attention to the union's demands. And now away from Nigeria, clashes with police broke out in Mozambique on Wednesday in fresh protest against disrupted election results, with 2 people reportedly killed and forced the closure of the main border with South Africa. Opposition leader Venancio Mondlane called for a fresh round of protest starting Wednesday after the election authority said the Frelimo party in power since independence from Portugal in 1979 had won the October 9th elections. A police crackdown on protests against the vote, which Mondlane claims was rigged, has already claimed the lives of at least 30 people, according to Human Rights Watch. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Let's head back now to Breakfast Central to continue with our top stories. I am Osaogie Ogbawa.
Welcome back. Agricultural experts in Nigeria have called for more investment in mechanization and the training of farmers to guarantee food security in the country. This was as experts converged in Abuja for the Agriculture Summit, Africa 2024, with the theme transitioning from scarcity to security. The summit witnessed deliberations from policymakers, agricultural experts, investors, and relevant stakeholders as they aimed to explore innovative solutions that will transform Nigeria's agricultural sector. Amadine Uyi brings us more in this report.
In State, It was a summit of stakeholders across the agricultural value chain in Nigeria.
Move us from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance and of...
The summit had in attendance stakeholders from finance, agriculture, policymakers, including those determined to change the story of agriculture in the country.
The Agri Summit Africa was started 7 years ago as a response to what we saw as the lack of collaboration between the various stakeholders. We observed that so many people were trying to solve the problem of food security. They were trying to find solutions to post-harvest losses. People were investing in finding solutions to the low agricultural yield. But a lot of them were not having conversations, they were not collaborating.
The Agriculture Summit Africa is a convening in its 7th year that brings together stakeholders within the agricultural value chain across the continent to discuss issues around policies that will drive value in that value chain.
And what actually distinguishes the Agriculture Summit Africa is the fact that there are actionable items that could be tracked. There are resolutions that could be implemented, and it is largely private sector driven.
Stakeholders here say the summit will galvanize practitioners, providing them with the right information and resources to boost yields and ensure food security in the country.
We need the players, the smallholder farmers in the room, because they need to do their work, not just the way we've been doing it in the past, but with industrialization.
We need to ensure that the right information, the right technical capacity, the right technical support is given to the practitioners so that they will be much more capacitated to engage in agricultural practices in the most productive way.
With Nigeria already declaring a state of emergency in agriculture, stakeholders are hoping that this summit will be the platform that will change the nation's food security fortunes. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Thank you very much, Amadine Uyi, for that report. Conversations about food security are very key to ensuring that we take the nation for where it is to where it ought to be. As hungry people are not the kind of people that you want to expect the best from. Right now, Nigerians are not experiencing the best of times. I mean, remember when we went to Abuja, we were broadcasting live from Abuja, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and a number of our conversations were centered around, is food insecurity in one of the sessions especially. And what we did see was that there was a general agreement that the current climate, beyond what the statistics are saying, everyone can relate to how it has impacted them physically. And it's impacted everybody, high and low. Because even if you're not thinking of food, there are like 10 people calling you to tell you about how hungry they are. Remember the reports that said how, I think it was in the Guardian newspaper, how it will take a family of 4 who eat one meal every day, 150,000 naira a month to survive in a country where the minimum wage is about 70,000 naira. The numbers don't look good. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, there is, many parts of it that require government attention. There's, of course, the security of, farmers. and the farms in different parts of Nigeria. There is, of course, the food inflation, which is currently at its highest ever. But, I think the focus mostly is also on the need for more investment in the agricultural sector in Nigeria, mechanized agriculture, in particular, storage, road infrastructure, from the farm to the marketplace and, to the consumer directly. Some of all those things are parts that need urgent government attention. I every now and then, think about how we're acting different. When we have a new minister for agriculture or new people heading these ministries, what new policies are being put in place to aid the agricultural sector in Nigeria? If we need proper investment in mechanized agriculture, is the Bank of Agriculture open to giving farmers funds, for, this level of mechanization? Are farmers even aware of the level of mechanization that is required? Are we even there as a country with the level of agriculture that we are currently practicing, to get into that stage of mechanized agriculture? And of course, what level of investments will be needed? It's pretty much the same thing with the Minister of Power. I read, in the news where he says that Nigeria needs about $10 billion investment to fix its power sector. Okay, but, now that we know that, what next? Who is going to be seeking loans if they need to seek loans? So it's the same thing with the agricultural sector. The private sector players in the agricultural sector, how much of them or how much support, do they require to invest heavily in the agricultural sector? I mean, they're important conversations. If you remember the report on maybe the Guardian or the Vanguard a couple of weeks ago that said 50% of farm produce is lost between the farm and the market because of failure of proper storage facilities.
And while hearing all of this, I think the one thing that stands out for me is the fact that we can mechanize all we want, but if farmers are not guaranteed of the security of their lives and the lives of their machines, then we still haven't made any much progress.
There's that.
That's a very key area.
And it's also tough, we're talking about, a certain level of mechanization with the level of electricity that we have.
Right.
So there's that.
So it's many moving parts, really. But let's move away from that to look at some politics. The Ondo State gubernatorial election is set to hold on Saturday, the 16th of November, 2024, with 2,053,000 voters and 61 registered who have been 2,053,061 registered voters, yes. And these are expected to cast their ballots across 3,933 polling units in the state's 18 local government areas. Major contenders include the incumbent Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa of the All Progressives Congress, the former Deputy Governor Agbola Ajayi of the People's Democratic Party, and Akimboye Bamidele of the Social Democratic Party.
Now, the largest and politically significant local government areas, including Akure South and Ondo West, are anticipated to play crucial roles in the election outcome. This off-cycle election comes after Governor Rotimi Akeredolu's passing in December 2023, with Aiyedatiwa stepping in as acting governor. I think there's also, a slowly building Labour Party presence also in Ondo State, with its candidates as well. But, like we started the program this morning, the big concerns for many people is not just the candidates and what they have to offer. I think it's already been established that we don't have enough conversations in politics that are focused on what these candidates individually have to offer to the people of Ondo State or wherever it is that they want to govern. Well, our biggest concern really is about credibility of the electoral process. How much trust does anybody have in INEC and, the Nigerian government to hold free, fair, and credible elections? And that, for me, is the key thing, the most important thing in the whole
It's not unfounded. It's not unfounded because we've seen a precedent in previous electoral cases, not just at federal levels, but also at state levels, where citizens have questioned the process by which these elections and the winners have come to power. There's been a lot of contest. Even in this election, the APC and the PDP are going at each other again, and PDP alleging that APC wants to undermine the poll. But we'll move away from that conversation. And now let's look at some conversation that has taken social media, Nigerians really, by storm. U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies, including the CIA, FBI, and DEA, have refused to release information related to Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, invoking the global response, a refusal to confirm or deny the existence of documents to protect national security. The response follows multiple Freedom of Information Act requests filed by Aaron Greenspan seeking investigative records on Tinubu and alleged criminal associates.
Now, the agencies argued that disclosure of any records could jeopardize U.S. national security by potentially revealing intelligence sources and methods. The CIA cited concerns that confirming any cooperation by informants or specific intelligence operations could expose individuals to retaliation and compromise broader intelligence networks. The case is currently before the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., with the agencies maintaining that privacy concerns and classified information protections justify their withholding of records. Now, joining us is lead investigative journalist, for really focus on this case, David Hundeyin. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. I think I want to start with, when the response is that we cannot confirm or deny, whether an individual is an intelligence asset or not, or is, an asset in any way, shape, or form or not. Is that to you interpreted as some level of confirmation that, yes, there is definitely something to hide, with a statement like that?
Well, so it's important to know the context in which that filing was made. So the purpose of the filing, the information that was requested was information that was in connection to a separate issue, which was the drug trafficking investigation records, which are held by sort of the cross-agency network. So that's the FBI, the DEA, IRS, the CIA, the State Department, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, which are the 6 government agencies that are involved in this lawsuit. These are the 6 U.S. government agencies that we sued to get this information. And basically, so the FBI has released the files that they have partially with several redactions. The State Department released a few files with, almost entirely redacted. The IRS claimed to have lost their files, very conveniently. And the DEA and the CIA are the last remaining agencies. And so they made this filing. And the CIA claimed that, to reveal the nature or to even reveal any information that we have about this person, about the subject, would compromise U.S. national security by potentially exposing a human source, a CIA asset, to exposure, and that by doing so, that's what you're reading on your screen now. So that could obviously then be very easily and very logically interpreted to mean that the person that this information is being sought about is in fact a cooperating CIA asset, not just a past CIA asset, but potentially even an active one. So, that was the context in which this filing was made. And in my view, so I'm not a lawyer, but in my view, the more important takeaway from this filing that was made wasn't even that was made by the CIA. It was that was made by the DEA, which I also included in the tweet that I put out, where the DEA made an argument in black and white. The DEA said, so that's what is on the screen right now. The DEA said, even though Nigerians have a right to know what their government is up to, the citizens' right to be informed doesn't extend to knowing what their president was up to. So the argument that the DEA is making in court is that the right of 230 million Nigerians to know what their government is up to doesn't include the right to know what the person who heads their government was up to before he became head of government, as though the two things have no link to each other. This is an argument that could not, conscionably be made in the context of a U.S. government official, U.S. public official, but that's the argument that the U.S. government is making in its own court against, the interests of 230 million Nigerians. So I just thought it's very important for the world to see that the people who champion democracy, who champion human rights and accountability in government, this is what they actually think of us. And this is the sort of arguments that they actually make about public office holders in the so-called developing world.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to bring, back the, I think you mentioned it already, whether, the allegations that he maybe was, an asset, and if he is currently still an active asset of the CIA, according to your revelations of what you're saying. But is it also fair for someone to argue that even if he wasn't, even if the Nigerian president wasn't related or connected to the CIA in any way, shape, or form, they still wouldn't be able to tell you because, well, it jeopardizes the integrity of the CIA or, of some sort, the way that they've put it. So it's not necessarily meaning that he definitely is, with the fact that they cannot reveal it.
Well, so the reason that argument doesn't hold water is that in this case, so I'm actually going to read an excerpt from the CIA's filing, which I have in front of me, where in addition to merely just saying that we can neither confirm nor deny, which is a standard global response, they actually go ahead to give the specifics of what would be exposed if they confirmed or denied. So it goes, as a general matter, the CIA does not reveal whether or not it had involvement in connection to or intelligence interests of specific individuals and or particular groups. Confirmation or denial of the existence or non-existence of records responsive to the request here would do precisely that. And doing so would reveal, among other things, sensitive information about the CIA's intelligence interests, activities, operations, and collection efforts, technical capabilities, and authorities. The CIA does not reveal the identity of its human sources because revealing the identity of a confidential source could expose agency tradecraft, among other human sources, and specific intelligence interests and activities. Now, there's a page that I'm scrolling to where his name was mentioned. Now, he says the indiscretion of one source in a chain of intelligence sources can damage an entire spectrum of sources. As such, confirming or denying the existence of records on a particular foreign national like Tinubu reasonably could be expected to cause damage to U.S. national security by indicating whether or not the CIA maintained any human intelligence sources related to Tinubu and identifying any access or lack of access any such sources had to intelligence concerning him. So I think it's very clear from that excerpt that what they're basically saying is we can neither confirm nor deny this, because confirming or denying this would basically, make it very clear that this person was or is an asset working for us, and that these potentially are the other people that are exposed to or connected to this person, and these are the tactics that we use for collecting information. In addition to this, even prior to this, prior in this FOIA case, some of the filings that have been made by other government agencies, including the CIA, have also invoked something called the Exemption 7C in the FOIA Act, which is an exemption relating to national security. So you then have to ask the very obvious question that if at every step of the case, the argument that is being made is not that we don't have any records of this person, or that we don't have any relevant records about drug trafficking on this person, the constant filing, the constant argument that is being made across all these agencies, the State Department, the FBI, the DEA, the CIA, is that releasing these records would somehow jeopardize U.S. national security. So you then have to ask, what exactly is the nexus between the president of a sovereign, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which is a sovereign country, and the national security interests of the United States government? That's the question that needs to be answered. At the very least, that raises a very important question that needs to be answered. Why on earth is the president of Nigeria so somehow deeply intertwined with the national security of the U.S. government? Is Nigeria a vassal state of the U.S.? What exactly is going on here? Why is nobody answering any of these questions?
So speaking of nobody answering any of these questions, you alluded to in your tweet, at the end of your tweet, you said, let's see what the Trump administration or the Trump era will bring. Do you maybe think that this is something that will be challenged again now that there's a new sheriff in town in the United States of America? And do you expect different results if this is being challenged?
So that's a very difficult question to answer because, as you probably do know, it's been the tradition over the years that U.S. foreign policy, especially U.S. Africa policy, doesn't really tend to change across both Democrat and Republican presidents. However, why I have expressed a measure of optimism this time around is that Donald Trump, as you know, is not a regular U.S. president. It's definitely not a regular Republican president. He's something of a maverick. In addition to being a maverick, as you know, he has a very personal grudge against the so-called U.S. deep state, which happens to be the so-called intelligence community and the very people who are involved in this, disclosure lawsuit. And he has no re-election to look forward to. So basically, he has there's no reason for him to pump the brakes. There's no reason for him not to go pedal to the metal, full throttle from day one. Some have even gone as far as to speculate that because from 2026, where there are midterm elections, he might no longer have full control over the House and the Senate, that he's going to try his best to cram everything he wants to do into the first 2 years of his tenure. So if that were the case, and if he were going to be as vengeful as he has indicated that he's going to be with regard to the so-called U.S. deep state, there is a possibility that issues like this could be revisited, not because the U.S. government or the Trump administration particularly cares about, Africa, about Nigeria, but simply potentially to spite his predecessor. If there's a U.S. president that were capable of doing such a thing, it would probably be Donald Trump. So again, we don't know for a fact that that is absolutely what is going to happen, but I am cautiously, quietly optimistic about it.
All right. Let's see how that goes. But I'll still look back at that tweet again. And you had said at this point, there is nothing more to be said about the direct role that the U.S. government plays in ensuring that Africa is constantly destabilized and afflicted with terrible leaders who create poverty and devastation. And I'd like you to expand further on your thought process regarding this tweet. Yes, we've heard people point fingers at the United States in several conversations and maybe even tweets, as we've seen some that you have retweeted as well. But I want to hear your thoughts as to what you're seeing that's making you add that to your statement. Beyond this, is there more to it than this case?
Well, yes, because ultimately the geopolitical calculation that the U.S. has made regarding Nigeria, regarding Africa as a whole, or at least sub-Saharan Africa, is that this is the region of the world whose economic role is meant to be the supply of cheap industrial inputs, raw materials and natural resources without beneficiation to the global economy. So basically the entire global order that currently exists, where there's one group of people in Europe and North America who are in the service economy, who are at the top of the economic food chain, who have the highest standards of living. And then there's a secondary group of people in primarily in Asia who are involved in secondary manufacturing. And then there's the final group of people in Africa and parts of Latin America that are like at the bottom rung, whose job, according to this economic doctrine, is to do the mining and farming and basically bring stuff out of the ground. And then that stuff is sent to the coasts of Africa as quickly as possible, and it's exported to the places that actually matter. That is the economic role that has been designated to the African continent. And the US, as you know, is very much at the top of the economic infrastructure that makes this possible. So institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, the World Trade Organization, these are very much American-controlled institutions that very directly that play a very direct role in ensuring that this economic role that has been assigned to Africa, Africa doesn't escape this role, right? So it's why people often make the comment that the U.S. government is basically a neo-colonial government, because that's essentially the existential purpose of US-Africa policy. It's to ensure that not so much that Africans stay poor per se, but that the US remains at the top of the food chain by maintaining the existing global order. And if it just so happens that the existing global order has it with Africans at the bottom of the rung, then it means that Africans must remain poor. So one of the ways to ensure that this economic poverty is retained, that Africa doesn't break out of its role as a primary producer, is to ensure that the people who are in charge of Africa's economic and political decision-making processes are people who are controlled. So there are people who will not do things that resemble the decisions that were made in places like Indonesia, China, and India over the past few decades, where those countries broke out of their own primary production eras and moved up the value chain and sort of revolutionized the entire global economy as we know it. Africa is the last place on earth which is yet to have its industrial revolution. When Africa does become industrialized, the entire global economy as we know it will be completely transformed, and those who are at the top today will no longer be at the top. So in order to prevent that from happening, in order to keep a certain group of people in power, it's important that the people who are in power on the African continent must be under the thumb of people who are at the top, which is why it's important to know if the president of the most populated country on the African continent is in fact a US foreign intelligence asset, because that would tie in very, very neatly with this exact neo-colonial system of economic domination.
Yeah, I was going to ask that you double down or at least speak a little bit more about why these court revelations would mean much to present day Nigeria. And of course, if you look back at 2015 to where we are, I've repeatedly said that our economic decline, in my opinion, our economic decline doesn't seem to just be mistakes made by persons in heading these positions, MDAs across the country. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's not my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter here. But I want you to speak a little bit more on this, because if you look at what a CIA asset means, there's many roles that you can play as a CIA asset. It could be intelligence gathering. A quick Google search, shows intelligence gathering, operational support, influence operations, technology or expertise, counterintelligence, financial logistics and enablers, some of all of that, which aren't necessarily meaning that, you are being used by the CIA to, topple a government anywhere else, or, to do anything necessarily negative. You could really just be a little spy that they place in some village someplace. So, what exactly, if, this is true, what makes it such a damning revelation for Nigeria?
So first of all, it's not, one doesn't have to go very far to even confirm the objective fact of the individual in question being at the very least a tattletale and an informant for the US government. All you have to do is go to the WikiLeaks cables and literally just type this person's name and see what comes up. This person has spent decades basically snitching on everything there is to snitch about in Nigeria to the US embassy, right? And this is on public record. You just go to the WikiLeaks, I think it's wikileaks.org, and just literally type in the keyword Tinubu and see what comes up. There's literally hundreds of diplomatic cables filled with him tattletaling about everything there is to tattletale about in Nigeria to the US embassy. So that's an objective fact, first of all. Secondly, why this will be of such keen interest to Nigerians is that, as you rightly said, over the past decade, Nigeria's GDP has basically halved. We've gone from a $520 billion economy to a $258 billion economy in 9 years. That doesn't just happen because there was a poor manager in place in charge of the economy. Nigeria has been described as the world's largest black market economy. It's an economy that sort of grows by itself. It runs itself. So for you to take that economy and halve it in 9 years, it's not a matter of mere incompetence. That's a series of very deliberate, very competent, negative decisions that were made. So it's now important to know that where were these decisions made, right? Were these decisions made in Abuja, or were they in fact made in Washington, D.C. as part of an existing effort to ensure that the African continent does not escape its role as the world's designated producer of natural resources, with its people who are designated as hewers of wood and drawers of water? Is that what is going on here? That's why it's very important for Nigerians to know who exactly is running the Nigerian government, who exactly is in charge of making decisions for the Nigerian economy. Is it a group of people in Abuja, or are those people in Abuja merely water carriers for a group of people in Washington, D.C., working at the U.S. State Department? That's what is the key kernel to take away from here, that this is not just some sort of entertainment story that, oh, the Nigerian president is a tattletale, he talks too much to the US, and it's more than just the US gathering intelligence. It's a real national security problem here, where, as you recall, last year there was a move by this same person, this same president, to attack a sovereign country, to attack on Niger, which historically has been probably Nigeria's closest diplomatic partner ever, probably even closer than Ghana. And there was an attempt to send the Nigerian military to illegally invade this country. This was something which was of no benefit whatsoever to Nigeria. There was no reason for Nigeria to do this. The so-called coup was a bloodless coup, and it had popular support. And then, being that Niger is a single buffer Nigeria has against the zone of chaos from Libya upward, there was no reason for Nigeria to want to destabilize Niger and potentially bring the wars of the North Sahara to its own border. And yet there was an attempt that was made to do this. Yeah. So who actually is making these decisions? It's very important for Nigerians to know. Is someone in Washington, D.C. making decisions like this on behalf of 230 million, potentially sending our men in the military to their deaths?
Yeah, all right.
And we had nothing to do with that. It's these are very important questions.
Yeah. Anyway, we here felt it was an important conversation to have, and that's why we, brought you in. Nigerians, of course, would continue to x-ray these revelations, and make the decisions for themselves, what these things mean, going forward. But thanks very much, David Hundane, for your time this morning, and of course, thanks for joining us. We'll speak with you again pretty soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, the conversations continue this morning. We'll take a very short break, and when we come back, we're moving in to talk about Ondo State. I think we can just get straight into it. We're joined this morning by the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thoughts, Sam Amadi, and of course, it's an expanded conversation on the Ondo State elections, the trust in INEC, which I have spoken about a little bit. Good morning, Mr. Amadi. Thanks for joining us.
Morning. Thank you.
Great to have you. I'm going to start with, something that I've repeatedly said this morning, which is the completely depleted trust in INEC. We've, had many attempts in the last couple of years, maybe in the last decade. One addition to the law here, one, new INEC policy here or there that, Nigerians felt maybe would build the trust, but that seems to have completely backfired. So talk about the trust in INEC and the trust in our electoral process as we head towards Ondo State elections.
Well, I think trust in INEC is a key component of trust in the electoral system. INEC is the electoral manager and responsible for most aspects of the election system. But again, the lack of trust in INEC has evolved to a point where it looks like total. The Afrobarometer report, which is the most credible African report on socioeconomic issues, said that before the 2023 election, that the trust in INEC, the Nigerian electoral system, was 75% of Nigerians do not trust the electoral umpire. The same way 75% do not trust the judiciary. So you can see it's a very high level of public distrust on INEC. And I think after the 2023 election, you might expect a much higher rate of distrust. Many things due to mistrust in INEC. Again, performance driven. If we watch over the years, INEC there's no electoral cycle where INEC has not, on evidence, objectively, suffered loss of credibility by doing many dumb things and deliberately.
we know that elections cannot be perfect, so there are logistic failures which do not necessarily impeach the credibility of electoral umpire. They could impeach, to an extent, their technical capability. As a matter of fact, INEC has improved on technical capability, so we don't have to have very long delays before the logistics materials come into the electoral polling units. We don't have to see failure to do those basic things, get the materials on time, get your polling officers and other workers, ad hoc staff on time. So all those basics are being worked at. INEC has improved really. INEC has also improved in terms of even mainstreaming technology. Even before the IRF, in 2023, INEC has upgraded, keep on digitalizing its platforms, accreditation of voters, and several things. But where INEC has actually progressed is in terms of integrity, which is basically that component that tells you that the officials first will obey their laws, the officials will follow through in good faith with their laws, and if there are even gaps in the law, the officials will act in a manner that kind of closes that gap through affirming the central objective of their electoral mandate. So the integrity is both institutional as an organization and individual as staff or management or chairman or commissioners who have responsibility. In this particular sense of institutional integrity and individual integrity, INEC has zeroed out. INEC is more or less running like a criminal franchise right now. And so that's what we see over time. So people have now don't have trust in INEC. I think the highest level of some kind of guided optimism was the run-up to 23 election. At that point, with the IRF, with the struggle, I will fought together with INEC to get an improved electoral act that somewhat does three things. First, it tries to create a sense of real-time electoral results transfer, which basically deals with the most dangerous aspect of our election, which is collection. So that the law that says you transfer, to the IRF, try to cure that problem by creating a kind of real-time second guessing of results. Don't forget that this built up from 2019 crisis, where INEC had a server, and when it was clear that something had happened, manipulation had taken place, INEC was asked to provide a server as as an evidence to show, to walk back from the backside. INEC claimed they didn't have a server again. And so 23 was act trying to cure that. Again, it tried to cure the issue around usurpation of candidacy, to make it clear that all candidacy of the parties must emerge from democratic primaries, and that INEC should supervise and ensure. Now, we saw that in many cases, the current Senate president, this did not happen, and INEC was even fighting with his commissioner, Mike Guinea, who rightly said election primary was held. I sent my people, this is the result. The Senate president who lost that election, and when he went back to Abuja, they cooked something up and did something and put him. So INEC said, look, it isn't the electoral commissioner has no authority. It's not authorized. So these are instances. At the end of the day, 23, INEC, without any explanation, shut down IRF, which was its own control guardrail to control and ensure that the incidences of collection officers, senior management officers, hooking up results, cancelling and mutilating and manipulating results would be very minimal, if at all. INEC got the legislative elections through by the presidency. The opinion officers complained about wrong password, and it took 6 hours before. And then to go to IRF, then you see some posting like goat, like human object, not result. So clearly, it was really election that failed at the level of INEC's deliberate failure. He went to court, and the tribunal, the INEC did not say, this is what happened scientifically. The Amazon Web Service provider came out and said, we don't have any glitch globally. Only one glitch happened globally, and they trace it exactly where it happened, not Nigeria. INEC's legal defense was, well, we are a commission, we could make laws, regulations, and we decided to throw it. Now, fast forward to Edo, and where we are now, going to Ondo. If you look at the Edo results, all the fight by observers, and of course, real time, if you look at the IRF, different result was used to declare winner, and now there's scrubblets going on. If you ask for a CTC, scrubblets, different things. So basically, if you are such an organization, then you don't have integrity about processes, about their procedures, that they speak to what they are, documentations, you can trust what comes from you, and then your officials themselves are trustworthy. And then you have internal system to overcome instances of conflict of interest. So if you are a resident commissioner in Ondo, for example, is somebody who is clearly, whose objectivity cannot be trusted in a particular election because of being a brother or cousin of a real political actor. You step that person back from that election for that election because you want to create a clear perception of objectivity and impartiality. So the failure of INEC to be a credible umpire undermines the trust, the credibility of the electoral system. And the fact that today INEC is being, doubling down on partisanship in terms of the new appointments or nominations by Mr. President. And the President has, when they came in, they appointed 2 or 3 more persons whose partisanship are beyond debate.
Right. In Ondo State, what you just made mention to, there have been allegations about Ade Adetimehin submitting APC members, 2 APC members to every poll. And this is not the first time that there's allegation of one political party in some way trying to undermine the election, maybe because the resident electoral officer is a member of that party, even though he's supposed to be non-partisan, or he or she is supposed to be non-partisan. But so many points you've raised here, and I worry about what that might look like when we get to the polls. Ondo State, as at the last count in 2022, was about 5.3 million people, and currently, according to the reports, we have slightly over 2 million registered voters. What do you see this as? What do you see this to be the implication of the voter turnout at the elections on the 16th of November? Do you think that with all these factors, there might be some measure of increased voter apathy? Is that something that we should be looking out for in the Ondo elections? And if yes, what other factors do you think may have contributed to that, judging from the immediate past gubernatorial elections?
We're going to see increasing decline in rate of turnover. I mean, the last was about 20 or 20%. In spite of the fact that the political parties were very, very active, Labour, for the first time, we have 3 parties fully deployed with resources, with enthusiasm and passion, and they campaigned vigorously. I mean, Peter Blue was there, almost moved for local government. The APC stalwarts were there. PDP, Atiku himself came in town. So it was really an election where, and the issues were very contentious. So you would expect spike in voter turnout. We didn't have that, understandably. Going to do, I produced the same thing, and they told the same thing would be worse. Look, the fact that if just the way INEC is today, and the way the cynicism around electoral management, from INEC to courts, that's another area. The courts' failure to show some kind of courage and good jurisprudence that aligns with the democratic theory that elections should be determined by voters and not by officials who manipulate results. The courts have done nothing really to create deterrence against electoral manipulation. And so it has doubled the pessimism around electoral accountability, electoral justice. And so what we're going to see that people are not going to really turn out for elections that much. We had very low turnout even in 2023, comparative to the level of passion. And we have the young people mostly on obedient platform, coming, the number of fresh new registrants who are young people increased somewhat. But going forward, I think that except there is a major national awakening around put a seeming revolutionary movement to take back power, you're going to see that the deep pessimism or deep lack of interest in the young people. Yeah. So the main people who still come out are those captive voters, old women in the villages, old men in the villages,
who they mostly target, you know, and these are the people that the political parties mostly target to buy and sell, you know, votes, you know, in the elections. Quickly, we're out of time, but I want you to also speak on Professor Monday Okpebholo. He has promised that that they have learned their lessons from Edo State and, you know, previous elections, and that Ondo State people would see a different INEC this time. It says, well, we've learned valuable lessons from not only from that election, but for previous ones. There are two main challenges. It talks about logistics and the second, managing results effectively. So do you have any faith in Professor Monday Okpebholo and what he's saying?
I think Professor Monday Okpebholo is a very first-class scholar, but I'm amazed he's always learning lessons all the time. He learned lessons in Igbo, learned lessons in 2019. Please, the problem with INEC is morality, it's integrity and ethics. They will learn no lesson because they are conflicted. It's not a mistake. They learn lesson actually with logistics. They keep improving, but the lesson they don't learn is the lesson to allow the electoral system to work as designed. They never learn lesson not to allow politicians to use them to win the election. And I have no confidence in Mahmoud at all to learn any moral lessons. I think he's smart enough to learn the lessons he has learned, but he's not credible enough or honest enough, doesn't show any level of integrity to learn the lesson he ought to learn. And the INEC as an institution, this is not about him again. I keep saying this. We need to change how we recruit people to INEC, take away from politicians. INEC today is an institution that has very low ethical, ingredients. Integrity is very low, and therefore, every election INEC conducts in this present form will always be election that is manipulated. It's systemic. It's wired into the system, and it's high time we start to dismantle and recreate INEC in a manner that always reports required. Which is an INEC that's not been politically appointed, an INEC that will have that distance from politicians to do the basic things. Look, our electoral crisis is not high-end, it's not high-tech. It's basic. It's about human beings in office having the objective to first do the right thing, not human beings in office who are appointed by political actors to help them rig election. That doesn't require elementary 5% can learn this lesson, but INEC with PhDs can learn it because that's the way they're designed, and they are partisan, and they're there not to do fair for election, but to manipulate elections for whichever principle that they want.
Yeah, well, I guess, Professor Monday Okpebholo, is just like the quote that says, life is, the biggest school, it keeps teaching you. And so he, continues to learn every new election, one thing here or the other. Sam Amadi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Okay.
Thank you.
But quickly, before you go, we just got off a conversation with David Hundeyin. Pretty damning, revelations from the court process in the United States. Quickly share your thoughts with us on that story, and how, what does it say to you? Do you first of all believe in what David Hundeyin is saying, and then also, what does this signify for us here in Nigeria?
I think two things. I think what David is saying is credible to a large extent. So one may argue that being an asset in that sense might not necessarily be that you are CIA real designated spy. But again, being an asset in the sense you have pointed should be what is up to us as Nigerians. And again, this is the problem with Nigeria. The journalists, apart from you guys who are having this conversation now, the media, the politicians, nobody's concerned about saying, what does this mean for national security? So I think his claim is believable. I mean, it's record. It shows that the CIA, of course, I know they have those implantations across the country. It's good to know whether he was doing that as a private person before he became political viable. In which case, we can say, well, he used to be, but no, or whether it's continued to be. That's an issue. And secondly, this is the most important one. We need to have a national conversation as to, even if it's false, if our president is being tagged a CIA asset, an active CIA actor or passive, it has implication for policy that the government is running. And so it means that there should be a real conversation. The presidency should, in the minimum, come out and state clearly what the issue is. The opposition politicians should, in the minimum, come out and say, Mr. President or presidential handlers, please explain this. So we should have a national conversation. We shouldn't just behave as if we don't know the implication of the fact that a country's president is an asset for the security of our country. I know that the Americans have, they diversified their sources. There are real spies, and there are those who are probably giving information without knowing. I mean, if you look at the Wikipedia leak, you see that so many public officials who talk to counsel, who talk to general counsels of U.S. or diplomats, and don't know that they're quoting information back. Those are forgivable. Those are, ignorant. Those are lapses. And you see somebody mention maybe former governor drinking tea with the consul general and say, you know what, giving secrets. Those are forgivable as error. But that's if you are an asset who has an authorization, a source of information in a formal or semi-formal format, that's troubling. That's not a case of negligence. The Americans are everywhere on the world map, getting information using people involuntarily. Yeah. If people are voluntary assets, it has implications. And so this must be a conversation. There should be an explanation, and the politicians, especially those who want to be president in 2027, should lead in interrogating what this means for Nigeria's sovereign policy-making capability. The global economy is an economy of subversion, of espionage. They need to be sure that those who are making policy in their country are people who are dedicated to national interests, and those who don't have something that the foreign powers have on them that causes them to make these wrong policies and misdirect the country's economic and social development.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much for joining us again, Sam Amadi. We look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Welcome back. And now let's take you through the newspapers this morning and share with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this Thursday morning. We're joined by public affairs analyst Charles Ideho. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's kick off on the daily independent newspapers this morning. Let's see what we can find. It says here, Nigeria needs $10 billion investment for 24-hour electricity, says the federal government. TCN laments attack on Obajana transmission substation. We can also find Wike clarifies Abuja judge's housing project, says it's a presidential policy. Minister lists why federal government breaches collective bargaining agreements. Federal government vows to eliminate new Lacroix terror group. And also, your organization is dirty, reps tell NACON chairman. FCCPC warns discos over flouting directive on meter replacement. And I think just one more because of time. MAN, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, canvasses government support for Dangote refinery.
All right, let's move on to our next paper now and look at what the big stories are saying. On the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, FCT houses for judges. Falana counters Wike, insists action unconstitutional, says gesture embarrassment to judiciary. We did it to protect judges, say the minister. Ondo governorship, 6 hospitalized as thugs attack PDP members. Federal government to launch organ transplantation policy in December. Reps querying NACON over 90 billion naira Hajj subsidy disbursement. World Diabetes Day, patients dying weighed down by high cost of medications, sad. We spend over 80,000 naira on drugs every month. Experts task government on cheaper policy for the treatments. Lacroix members flee KB as troops intensify onslaught. Gunmen attack army checkpoint in Abia and kill 2 soldiers. Tinubu's mining sector reform is drawing global attention, and that's all on the Daily Trust. Let's move to our next paper.
The next paper this morning is the Nigerian Tribune. It says there, Ondo APC rally. Tinubu evokes adjusting Aketi's memories in push for votes. Suspected political thugs strike in Ondo, injure 6 in Idare. 3 bodies still missing as black box of crashed helicopter arrives Abuja for analysis. Very sad story there. How National Assembly members encourage corruption in public sector, says Jega. And also 2025 budget, Makinde proposes 678 billion naira. Adeleke presents 390 billion naira to House of Assembly. Okpebholo dissolves boards, sacks political appointees. I think that's the final story that we can take this morning on the Nigerian Tribune. We're going to bring in our guests to quickly start off on the $10 billion investment needed for 24-hour electricity, and that is from the federal government.
Okay, well, first, let me say that I think if you look at it, beginning from when the reformation and all this it should have started in the economic, the electricity sector, it happened actually during Obasanjo's dying days. I mean, what I mean by dying, the way he was going to leave power in 1999, if I'm not mistaken, but I think it started at about 1990, 2000, exactly, 2007 or so. So what actually happened was that we were all told that we needed to have that sector privatized, and what they were saying was that they referred us to what happened in the telecom industry, where that sector was privatized, and we were enjoying the benefits with all the telcos. So we thought, I mean, they forced that down our throat for us to accept the reforms in the electricity sector. But how many years down the line, we are still being told that we are not yet close to El Dorado, and we've now been told that we'll be requiring about $10 billion for us to have 24 hours electricity supply. Of course, these were the things we were told, as I said, during Obasanjo. Now, you can be out of power for a very long time. But yeah, that came and they died, and then you had the Jonathan, who spent about 6 years, and then Buhari entered there and spent 8 years. We are still talking about 24 hours of electricity supply. But I don't know who is going to do that, because they just find a way of diverting attention. For me, I think it's something we need to look critically into to know whether indeed someone is telling us the truth or they are not telling the truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't really know exactly what the situation is there and what the promises are before we can finally find some form of break when it comes to the power sector. It's faced a lot of challenges in the past few years. Well, not past few years, for the very long time.
A long time. It's so long. I mean, too long.
All right, let's move over to another conversation that's taken center stage on the front page of the Daily Trust. Fallen accountants Wike insists action on constitutional says gesture embarrassment to judiciary. We did it to protect judges, says minister. And this is talking about the FCT houses for judges that has sparked conversations. Some people are saying it's their entitlement. They should get this. After all, the legislators also get their cars and all their other entitlements. And nobody. Well, Nigeria is still making fuss, but not as much as this has been. But the major argument would be that this is basically something that presumes bias. But let's hear your thoughts on this story.
Well, for me, I think Falana is a respected lawyer here in Nigeria. We've had many occasions, more than one. I try to rely on him, his interpretation of the law and all that. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. So if he says something is wrong, I do not have any objection at all, because he must have looked at the body of laws we've got in this country for him to realize that what is happening now is not something we should applaud. For me, I think it's like a way of muzzling, if you will, muzzling the judiciary. I mean, we have 3 tiers of government. The executive, the legislature, and of course the judiciary, and each of them are supposed to be independent of each other, okay, even though they are complementary. So when you now have one aspect of the 3 legs, now, bind, in a manner of speaking, bind the conscience of the other, then we have no other option to raise this concern. For instance, I mean, Wike tried yesterday to be very creative, to say he didn't consider he is not the president. It was part of the president's, promises. But again, you have the judges and the emoluments, everything about the judges of the judicial officers in Nigeria is in what they call the first line charge. Okay, so when that's why you don't owe judges. So I expected that that first line charge, they should draw from the first line charge to take care of the welfare of judges, not where you have to openly, as one tier of government, now taking care of the affairs of the other. And in this country, that when elections are held, they usually not the decisions are not taken at the ballot at all. So when you take them to where they are counted, the votes are counted, it usually ends in disputes, and then these disputes will end up in court. And who would you mean? They are the judges. So if you find the executive who wants to benefit from all these regularities in the electoral process, and you're meeting the judges who have been taking care of, in a manner of speaking, you are buying them houses, you are buying them cars in order for them to live like people who are in heaven, in a manner of speaking, then I wonder how you can get justice. I wonder how you can get judgment. I mean, in such a situation, for me, I think it's a travesty. It's a travesty that we must all condemn.
Okay. Well, there have been condemnations against this. The arguments are still ongoing.
Yes.
But we'll explore the conversations as they, emerge. Let's move away to the update with Lakurawa. We're seeing the good news here that Lakurawa members flee KB as troops intensify onslaught. When we first heard about the big story, Nigerians expressed a lot of concern. There are those who just felt, it's the same thing, still the same insecurity challenge, just different headlines. But, I mean, is this looking good for us?
It's not looking good because from all sides of our national life, we're facing challenges. I mean, we have not even settled one. We're having another. So I think that's exactly what I've become very burdensome to our military formation, military infrastructure. We had the Boko Haram coming into the fray in 2009. I mean, we have not been able to totally contain them. Then we had banditries coming in, and now we are talking about Lakurawa, which I understand is there is a formation of a splinter group from Mali and some of this Sahel region. So, but again, I just do believe that what the government is doing, or I hope not actually be what the military are doing, I think they should, ensure that they sustain this onslaught. I understand they are fleeing to Chad, and Chad is also trying to see how they can contain them. So maybe if they're able to box them into a center, we'll be able to rout them, and so we can have exemplar of peace, even though we don't have total peace in the days to come.
Oh, well, the NSA and the Nigerian government, generally has its work cut out for it. I'm hoping that they succeed. Because even if, yes, many people have said that Lakurawa, are not a new group. They've been in existence since at least 2018. And
yes,
prior.
I agree. Yes.
It's important that they do not now become the new bone in the neck of the Nigerian.
But again, before we move on, I wonder why. I mean, they've been there for a while. I think somebody said about 2018 down to about how many years? About 6 years. So, but I understand they have been able to, curry the favor of some of the community where they are now festering. What they do is that they go over there. The twin tools they use. They look at sermons. They preach sermons to them. Promising them El Dorado using some Quranic sermons to win them over, and apart from that, they also give them welfare packages, which of course they're not, as they said, they're not receiving from the federal government. So I think what we need to do is to deploy what I call superior packages for these people, and then to also find a way to deconstruct some of these homilies that these people are serving them, homilies that they're promising them heaven. And in most cases, some of these people who are listening to this homily, they haven't opened their Quran, so they don't know the difference between what they are being told and then what the real situation is in the Quran. So I think we have a lot to do that. The military authorities, the federal government also have to, possibly recruit some Islamic clerics who know the Quran to tell them, no, what you have been told is not in line with what the Quran says at all.
All right. Quickly, Ondo State elections coming up. Very low trust in INEC and in Nigeria's electoral process. How do you think things will turn out in Ondo State? And of course, in Edo State, the new governor has just been sworn in, even if, there's still litigation from the PDP.
Well, litigations in our elections may not end soon, because when politicians know that they can always go to the judiciary to try their luck, as you say, just like Kalu, let me try my luck if something's going to happen. And in most cases, you find some of these things happening. I mean, let's look at Imo State as an example. Somebody who came fourth in a contest, in a contestation, and then over time it was now said he's the owner of the victory. So if people think that what is doing today can also be replicated in other states, that's why I said that the elections contestation in the course may not end very soon. So, but INEC, what INEC should do is to ensure that they buckle up. Let's move away from this analog system and embrace in total. Let's embrace in total the electronic voting, diaspora voting, and ensure that some of these irregularities are a thing of the past. For instance, I would want us to be voting, maybe use phone codes. I mean, the way they do something when you have these reality TV shows where people vote, and then these things are done within hours. Votes are cast, and then votes are counted. Then winners emerge. So I don't see why we should be dealing with an analog system. We're dealing with a hard copy. What's it called? A ballot process to now be counting, and then we are using biro, pens and all that to be writing, and then falsification of results are, usually rife in that kind of. So I think we should go totally digital, so that going digital will help to stem the tide of this regularity, and all these things will be a thing. But for now, my hope is still not very high that INEC will do it right in Ondo State.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing really is just a clear evidence that there's not been so much of infrastructural and technological development in Nigeria in at least the last 2 decades. We still seem to be doing things, like we're in 1996 or even in 1990. There's a lot of our, MDAs that have not been able to develop themselves, with technology. There's no new infrastructural developments, and I'm not talking about roads and bridges now, but different types of infrastructure that should have aided development. Maybe it's because we've not been able to get 24 hours power. Maybe there's just no interest in modernizing the process with which we do things in Nigeria, and that's why. So anybody, now you're talking about digitalizing the electoral process. A lot of people would even tell you that we shouldn't even dare do that because, that process can also be bypassed, or, could be hacked, by these political figures. But the key point is there's just been no, significant level of infrastructural and technological development in Nigeria for so long. It's trickling in bits and pieces.
But again, sorry, if you must know, without sounding a bit, this is my own personal opinion as a political watcher. I'm also a journalist who I've covered election for so many years in this country. I'm also a political commentator. I'm also, let me quickly add that I'm also a politician in training. So I do understand these things. Some of these things, if not all, are deliberate. I can tell you, because if you look at the situation today, some of them who are benefiting from this political process, they are benefiting, and if they are benefiting in this warped system, would you expect them to try and fix it? Somebody who is benefiting from a warped system would not want to clean it up, because if you clean it up, then he will not benefit. So that's why I'm saying this is my opinion, is my personal opinion, that I think is deliberate, because if you fix it, people will not want to, okay, they will not win. Okay, let me give an analogy. If you have 1 or 2, 3 madmen who have found shelter in an uncompleted building, nobody looking their way, and then you now tell them, or they will not decide to say, okay, let us clean this building and then make it livable. What happens? They shot themselves in the foot. Very, very soon, if they're able to fix that building, the building that was uncompleted, that provided shelter for them, you now find people, sane people coming there to say, okay, they want to rent the house. What happens to the insane people? They'll be thrown out through the window. So that's exactly what I feel that the political actors, they are doing. They are deliberately not wanting to fix it so that they will continue to benefit from the warped system.
Yeah, which of course, Nigerians would have to, suffer for in the long run. Yes. It's pretty pathetic.
But it doesn't bother them as long as their nests are feathered. The rest of us can go to hell. That's the way they think.
Charles Edo, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to quick break. There's more to come this morning. Stay with us on Breakfast Central.
Welcome back. The Federal Capital Territory Minister, Nyesom Wike, has dismissed allegations that the government's plan to build housing for judges in Abuja is politically motivated. Wike clarified that the project is a welfare initiative approved by President Bola Tinubu to support the judicial independence, not his own policy. He noted that the housing for judges was included in the 2024 budget, which he is tasked with implementing.
Wike emphasized that the initiative aims to provide judges with secure housing to prevent political manipulation. He also defended the project against criticism, arguing that similar projects he introduced as governors of River State were positively received.
And of course, the FCT minister also spoke on the PDP crisis, saying leadership is not by talking, but by action. It continues to unravel more and more of what might be going on with the PDP. But let's hear from the FCT minister.
Leadership is not by mouth, it's not talking. It's not by talking, it's by action. It's not tomorrow you're going to blame INEC. How do you know how people are treacherous? When Tabua finished as the chairman of PDP Governors Forum, we have only done it north and south. But Bala connived and went to Bauchi and took away the chairman of Governors Forum of PDP to the north. Of course, he knows if I was governor, it will happen. He knows if I was governor, it will happen. He succeeded in that because he was going a frontal ambition.
Well, and that is from the FCT minister. And, just like, I said, it maybe shows signs that the friction within the People's Democratic Party may not be over anytime soon, as these, in quote, factions continue to battle and tussle, amongst each other for what direction the party heads. The Atiku Abubakar, permit me to call it a faction, but, the Atiku Abubakar faction and the Nyesom Wike faction, continue to, of course, have this friction. The party itself, which, many Nigerians have repeatedly criticized for its supposed role as the lead opposition party in Nigeria and its failure to actually be the opposition party in Nigeria. Nigerians have repeatedly criticized it. But the party continues to argue that all is well. There's nothing wrong with it. They don't necessarily need to sanction anybody in the party. Maybe wait till we have our next, national meeting of the party. Maybe we will sanction somebody there, maybe not. But nobody even knows who will be the chairman, the approved chairman of the party in the next national meeting of the party. Nobody knows. But they keep saying, maybe when we get there, we might sanction, we may not sanction. And of course, the part where they are supposedly meant to be the opposition party, the seeming narrative that the PDP seems to be selling as, its defense of it still being the opposition party in Nigeria is that it has the structure. It's the one that has the biggest spread across the country. And you cannot be opposition if you do not have that spread across the country. And that's simply good enough for the PDP and its defenders. That you don't really need to actually oppose and create an option for the Nigerian people. You don't need to stress yourself doing that. All you need to do is have the structure across the country. Be the one that has the biggest spread across the country. Which, of course, they might, anybody might argue that, yes, they do. And if you look at state elections across Nigeria today, you still see that the PDP's candidates still, are the ones that, if they don't win, have a very, very strong chance of winning because of their level of popularity. But that's all that exists, simply popularity. But away from that, let's move away and talk about what's going on in other parts of the world.
Now let's move on to the UK. Excuse me. The UK's Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says he is committed to a more ambitious climate goal for the UK, with an 81% emissions cut by 2035 at COP29 Climate Conference, which is holding in Azerbaijan from the 11th of November to the 22nd.
The highlight of the event is the absence of several influential world leaders who were not able to attend the Action Summit this week at the Center of Climate Talks in Azerbaijan. High on the agenda is a deal to boost climate funding for developing countries. Our correspondent, Bettina Nweli, is live in Baku, and she joins us now. Good morning, Bettina. I'm not sure if you can hear us, but good morning, Bettina. It must be nice to not have to deal with, national grid for a couple of days. We congratulate you and we celebrate you. But tell us what's going on at COP29. I saw the Belarus president, I believe, speaking in a video yesterday, and of course complaining that it seemed like it was just a waste of time. And maybe that's one of the reasons that major world leaders aren't present this time.
I wouldn't say it's a waste of time. In fact, we just witnessed a signing between two organizations, a Nigerian organization and the UK aid. So I think that people who are here know why they are here, and they are facilitating the investments that they need to combat climate change. Apart from that, we are also hearing talks about a methane reduction. Yesterday, the DG of the NCCC, that's the National Council on Climate Change in Nigeria, talking about how financing is going to help in reducing the methane production around the world, especially in Nigeria. Now, methane is not talked about a lot, as often as it should be compared to carbon dioxide, but we do realize that methane is more harmful than even carbon dioxide. It's almost silent, and it's something that a lot of nations are looking forward to reducing. But this morning, I have a delegate from Plateau State government who is also going to tell us about the challenges that Plateau State are experiencing with regards to climate change and how they intend to mitigate them during the course of this COP29. Good morning, sir. Please join me here. You're looking into the camera. Please tell us your names and your designation.
Yeah, my name is Garba Gowon Gonkol. I am currently the project coordinator of Plateau Agroclimatic Resilience in Semi-Arid Landscape Project. It's a World Bank assisted project, basically, in Plateau State.
All right, sir, can you tell us some of the climate challenges that Plateau State is currently experiencing?
All right, Plateau State actually is one of the states in northern Nigeria that is experiencing climate change effect. Of course, Plateau, as you all know it, is the coldest state in Nigeria. And of course, if you realize in current situations that we are experiencing, Plateau climate, Plateau weather has, within the shortest time, changed. And of course, the reason cannot be connected with the climate effect. Plateau, it is a land that is beautiful, a land that, if you look at the landscape of Plateau State, you will see that it is on a hilly area, and the meaning of Plateau is that it is a highland which has a table-scape land. And so, presently, Plateau is passing through degradations of all forms as a result of climate change.
All right, so can you tell us some of these degradations that you're talking about? Earlier, you talked about rivers drying up and...
Yeah, degradation, basically, we have land degradations. Land has lost its fertility because of effects of climate change as a result of erosion. You see, the land is being washed away, and some of the effects that further expose the land to erosion is a result of people cutting down trees, making these hydrocarbons, all this contributed a lot to, washing away the surface land and exposing it to gully erosions.
All right, so having said all of this, can you now tell us how you intend to mitigate these issues in this country, in this COP29? How do you intend to facilitate discussions that will mitigate the issues that Plateau State is currently having in terms of climate change?
Yeah, this COP29 is timely, and if you realize, Nigeria just signed an agreement with the UK, particularly on issue of financing. And Nigerian government has been up and doing by accessing some international donor agencies. For example, the project which...
All right, stay tuned because we'll be continuing the conversation with our subsequent shows. We have the news coming up at 9 a.m. and we'll be connecting again with Azerbaijan to bring you the climate update, COP29. But thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back again, same time tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. I am Olive Emodi, and I'll see you tomorrow.
And I am Osaogi Ogbon. See you tomorrow.